Welcome to Frank's Diana Explains. Today's topic is how to get great reference letters. Reference letters is what you need when you are applying to various places, such as a post in graduate school, or maybe a scholarship that will fund your studies, or maybe a job, or maybe a promotion. All these things are somewhat similar. Just to fix my mind, I will be thinking of an undergraduate seeking a reference letter for graduate school application. But the other things are not a million miles from it, and similar considerations apply. One thing I said several times in other videos is that when you are considering a situation, it is helpful to think of the viewpoint of other people rather than just your own. In this case, it is particularly appropriate to think of the viewpoint of others, and the others involved would be the person who receives the reference that's been written about you and the person who has to write the reference for you. So from the viewpoint of the recipient, what is this letter? Well, this letter is something that comes together with a bunch of other documents which form your application materials, which will consist of, for example, your transcript of exam marks, your CV, the various things you've done up to that point, a personal statement, and so on. And on the basis of these other materials, the recipient of your application will form some idea about you and your ranking among all the others that they have received applications from. And they will have to decide which ones to pick. And it is not the case that if a brilliant letter comes in, then that will make you get over the bar. Usually the recipient has made up its mind based on the rest of the stuff in your application. And the referee's letter is a kind of validation of, yeah, I think this is pretty good. What do other people think about this person, having worked with them? The letter of reference basically always says the candidate is great. Otherwise, you would get a letter of reference from someone else. So the recipient of these letters has to read in a kind of cynical mood, say, well, it's great, it's great, it's great. They all say it's great. Now, what do I read between the lines? This great. One thing that the recipient will look at is the metadata. Where did this letter of reference come from? From what institution? From what person? If the person is someone that they've never heard of, from a place they've never heard of, then how can they distinguish it from just an unscrupulous candidate asking their pal to write a letter and saying this person's great? If, on the other hand, the person writing the reference comes from a reputable place and is well known in the field, has a reputation to defend, then they will not write fake reviews, as it were, for random applicants, because it would reflect badly on them if this person were admitted and was discovered to be a fraud. Because they say, well, this referee has written that this candidate was great, and instead was not great at all. So don't trust this referee. It's just bullshitting about the qualities of candidates that are not reflected in reality. So that would tarnish their reputation. So if the letter writer has a reputation to defend, then it would be worth something to the recipient of the letter, even if the recipient of the letter doesn't know them personally. If the institution of the letter writer is one that is well known and is, say, one of the best universities in the world, then I, at Cambridge, as the recipient of a reference letter coming from MIT or Stanford or Berkeley or another famous place like that, I will know that when they say this is an exceptional candidate, it means the same kind of stuff that I mean when I say an exceptional candidate based on the ones I see over here in Cambridge. If it comes from a place that's, at rank 500 in the world list of universities, then when they say an exceptional candidate, it means an exceptional candidate among the ones that they have seen, which may be quite a different standard. So in that sense, the metadata is somewhat important. Now, because all letters of reference just say the candidate is great in various ways and with various degrees of flourish, then a number of institutions accepting reference letters will ask the writer to also quantify things a bit more precisely. And for example, they will say, when this person got their degree, this candidate got their degree, how many students were there in the class? For example, 105. And where did they rank in this class? Was it like number 3? Was it number 16? Was it number 94? Because you can still say they're great, and they probably were all great. I mean, maybe all 105 were great, but we want to know where they were within that that cohort, so that we can deform slightly the otherwise very enthusiastic prose that we might otherwise get. If someone was the best of their class, then it tells me something, no matter what the class was anyway. And sometimes these bands, this is quantized into bands and say, well, were they in the top 5% or the top 10% or top 20%, top 50%? So if you are applying for a very selective program, like would be for a PhD in Cambridge in computer science, candidates that are too low in these bands, it doesn't matter what the rest of the letter says, because that already disqualifies them compared to the other excellent candidates that are there. So in some sense, the freedom of the letter writer to embellish things is limited by the fact that they have to give some concrete information about the ranking. And so this is something that we'll come back to later, but there's no way that the letter writer can make you outstanding if you're not actually outstanding. Letter writer is like a spotlight that can illuminate the great things that there are to admire about you, which otherwise people might not notice. And the great referee is the one who will shine this bright light on your best part and say, look how great this is, look how great this is, and look how great that is, and that. That's excellent. And that will make you shine. But you have to have something that shines first of all. Otherwise, we can't shine the spotlight on stuff that doesn't shine by itself. So anyway, the reputation of the letter writer might seem extremely important to the candidate asking for the letter to be written. It is not quite the same as you might imagine. So if the letter writer has a Nobel Prize, and say, well, it's going to be my best reference. I got a reference written by Nobel Prize. Well, in our field, nobody has a Nobel Prize. It's a Turing Award winner. My referee has a Turing Award winner, so I will stand out among all other candidates. Well, the point is that the letter writer will stand out as the Turing Award winner, not necessarily the candidate. I mean, the Turing Award was awarded to the referee, not to the candidate, and the letter reader will distinguish between those two things. So what is much more important than how famous the letter writer is how well does the letter writer know the candidate, and how specific can they be about the qualities of the candidate. For example, if the letter writer has worked closely with the candidate over a period of several months, has supervised their project, knows very well what they did, knows very well how they solved problems in a brilliant way, and they will be able to write specific things about the qualities of the candidate that are going to be very valuable and very worthy to the recipient of the letter, because they will highlight why this candidate is great. So every letter says this candidate is great, and the good letters say why the candidate is great with specific evidence to support it. So you should choose your referee not so much on how famous, on the basis of how famous they are, but on the basis of how well they know you and how much they admire what you did in the period of time that they interacted with you. These are the ones that are conducive to the best letters. Now let's look at things from the viewpoint of the person who has to write the letter. So your referee. Okay, what does it look like from the viewpoint of your referee? It looks like a lot of work because a good letter of reference takes some time and effort and concentration to write things that are going to be taken in as good and worthy representation of that person that the referee wants to get an offer from the place they're applying to. So the referee has to put in quite a bit of work to write this nice letter, has to weigh the words carefully, has to make a coherent case as to why that is the best place for that candidate and why that candidate would make that place proud if they accepted them. And so considering that the deadlines are similar for all the applicants and that the referee will typically be asked by several candidates to write letters for them all more or less at the same time, then it is quite a burden to have to comply with all these requests. And so this is something that the referee will do for people whom they believe deserve it. And so I would consider that people who have been my students or people who've been my employees certainly deserve my support when they are moving on to their next step in their career, and I will do my best to help them out. Sometimes I get asked to write letters of reference from people with whom I don't have a working relationship. Sometimes people have just met at a conference and say, "Can you write a reference for me?" Well, really? Why? And sometimes I get asked, I get an email from a random person I never heard of who says, I'm just applying for my green card and you are very reputable in your field and it would be great if you could write a letter that justifies that they should give me a green card because I am such a valuable new up-and-coming scientist in this field, and you're qualified to say that I am. And I've never heard of this guy, of course. And I know that this is a lot of work for you, so here's a letter that my lawyer prepared, and if you want, you can just scan through that and add a few sentences and then sign it off. And I really wonder why these people think that I or anyone else would put my reputation on the line to say that I believe that this person deserves X, Y, Z if I've never heard of them before. So don't do that. If you are someone who has a working relationship with me instead, then by all means ask me and I will be happy to support you. That's the general case. Now, even if I say that, you should, even if you believe you have that relationship with the person you want to ask that they write a reference for you, it is always a good idea to ask them first before you put their name in on the form as your referee. So even if you're super sure that this person will support you and will indeed write a letter, ask them first. It is polite. It would just put them in a bad mood, even if they were going to do it anyway, if you have put their name down without asking them first. It could also be that they're just overwhelmed with other stuff to do. It could be there's circumstances you're not aware of for which just writing more letters of reference is not a priority for them at the moment. Or it could be that there could be a bunch of other things. Just ask. And if you have history with that person going back, it is likely they will say yes, but ask. Now, as I said, you need to give your referee a good time for writing this letter in. If you are rushing them, they are unlikely to be well disposed towards you. If you give them time instead, then they will be grateful, because it's actually a minority of the askers who are so considerate as to give good time, a month or more. and they will like you more than the others, and they will write a better letter for you in recognition of the fact that you were considerate. Give them time, and also give them as much ammunition as possible to write great things about you. So give them all the application papers that you're going to submit, all the stuff that you are going to send, and also all the stuff that they sent you as a request. If there is some kind of call or description of the post or whatever, send your referee that as well as all the other things you want to do. Don't try to optimize and say, well, the deadline is X, so I'm going to ask the referee to write their letter, and at the same time I will fill in the rest of my own paperwork. No, you work harder. You first prepare all your paperwork, and when all your paperwork is ready, you give that to your referee, who is then going to be in a much better position to write an excellent letter for you, because they have full visibility of what you've done. They don't have to go and dig it out for themselves. So what grades did they get in their first year, in their second year? Now I have to go and ask a student admin and so on. So don't make them do that kind of legwork. You prepare all the stuff. You get all your transcripts together. You get a list of all your achievements and publications if it's further on than just an undergraduate, and all the great stuff you've done, and your personal statement, all of that. And with that package, and with plenty of time, then your referee is sure to be very well disposed to writing the best possible reference letter for you. Now, obviously, you will require several letters of reference, and so you will have to choose who are the people that you are going to ask. And your main criterion should be who are the people who know you best and like you best. Not so much how famous they are, but the people who know you best, have worked with you, are very familiar with what you have done, are going to be the ones who are going to be able to write a letter that carries weight. Now, as we said several times, the letter of reference always says this person is great. And then there's going to be various degrees of great, and this is something that has to be finely tuned. The last thing that the referee wants is to write a letter, this person is great, and then have a discussion with the applicant who said, you only wrote I was great, you didn't write I was super exceptionally great, and therefore it's your fault that I didn't get offered a place. So that's the last thing any referee wants. A number of referees will be uncomfortable writing a letter if they know that it will be shown to the candidate eventually. So if you want to make your referee comfortable about writing honestly, instead of just having to be polite and not really say anything, then it is a good idea to say, I'm happy for the reference to be closed, and I will waive my right, if it is offered to me, to actually view the reference. Some referees will even refuse to write a reference letter unless they have this guarantee that it will stay closed. If the candidate would actually want to see the letter because they are a bit apprehensive that maybe the referee has written something less than complimentary about them, then it was the wrong choice to ask that particular referee if they're not sure that they're going to write great stuff. The applicant would do better to ask another referee with whom they have a better working relationship and whom they believe admires their work genuinely and is going to write great things. Now, what should you do as the candidate in order to secure a great reference letter? Well, by far the best thing you can do is to be great. And this is something you should start doing years before asking for the reference letter. Just be great throughout. Do well in your work. And this is something that will always be recognized and will always be rewarded. If you are excellent, if you are brilliant, if you do things that your superiors like, then it is very difficult not to get glowing reference letters when you ask for them. The opposite case is if you don't stand out, if you don't do anything that is worth remarking throughout your years during which you know the person to whom you finally ask to write a reference, then what can this person write that is going to be outstanding and exceptional and head-turning for the letter recipient? So the best thing you can do to get a great reference letter is to be great for the years that lead up to the day when you ask for the letter to be written. Now, sometimes the person that should be writing the letter is mandated, in the sense, your supervisor should be writing a letter, your boss should be writing a letter, but usually you're asked to provide several, and so you have choice in which other ones you should pick. And as I hinted at before, you shouldn't choose necessarily based on how famous they are, but more on how closely they know your work. They have to have some kind of minimum status, of course, to be respectable. But you can't ask someone who's your peer. You should ask someone who's the peer of the letter recipient, in some sense. But once you are in that broad class, then it doesn't matter so much where they are in the broad ranking over there. It matters a lot more that they know your work and they know why you would be a good match for that place you're applying for. Now, if you have had an unpleasant relationship with the person who might be writing your letter, then it's usually mutual, this feeling, and so it's unlikely that they will write a great letter. They will always, if they're asked and they're your kind of line manager or supervisor or whatever, they will always write the letter if you ask them, because they, in some sense, they have to. But it's unlikely to be a fantastic letter. It would be a very factual letter. Okay, this person worked here from that to that. And so plan ahead. If one day you're going to be asking that person a reference, then try to keep a good relationship with them. Otherwise, you'll end up in a situation where it's better not to get a reference from them at all and just live with that. So I mentioned that it's always a good idea to give your referee plenty of time. I should mention that it is your duty to ensure that the reference letters get there on time. There's a deadline by which the letters should appear at the recipient's end, and the responsibility is on you to make sure that this happens. Now, of course, it's difficult because someone else is writing this letter, and you might feel, when you're getting in the last period and the last week before the deadline and nothing has happened yet, you might feel like you want to send them a reminder, and it actually would be a good idea to send a polite reminder, but you will only have a moral right to send a reminder if you were timely yourself when you gave them the material to write the letter. So if you have given them 1 or 2 months with all the paperwork in order to write the letter, then by all means, if you're getting to 1 week before the deadline and it hasn't been sent yet, then you should politely remind them, and it's perfectly proper to do so. If, on the other hand, you only contacted them 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, and then suddenly you are fretting because they haven't sent it yet, then all you can do is just shut up. So this is one more reason for wanting to start early from your side, so that your part is done properly, and then you have some good standing for when you might need to remind them to move on. Now, remember that the person who has been looking after you, the person who's been your academic supervisor, the person who's been your line manager and so on, actually does want you to succeed and to do well and be accepted. And so they will feel a duty to help you out. And so if you if you have built up to this track record of doing good stuff, they will owe something to you, and this will always come back to you in a good way. So make sure throughout your relationship with the person who one day might write a good reference for you, that you have it in mind that all the good deeds you do will then pay for themselves in that and other ways in due course. Now, remember also that if you are asking a person of that wisdom and stature to write great things about you, that might also be a good person with whom to have a discussion about your next step before you actually commit to doing one thing or another, before you actually apply to a certain place or several. You might first say, well, dear person who has known me for a number of years and whom I might ask to write a reference for the things I'm planning to do, can we first have a chat? Do you mind if we have a chat about the things I want to do? And then from their experience and wisdom, they might give you other perspectives. Maybe the way to reach your ultimate goals is not just the one you have charted. There may be other ways to do that. There may be other routes you might apply to other places that you haven't considered. They might know about other things you don't know, where you could get a better deal, as it were. They might recommend something else you do. They might recommend another course of action instead of doing a PhD straight away. Spend some time in the real world and then come back. For example, I have another video about how and when to do a PhD. That kind of discussion is usually very enlightening, and this is yet another reason for approaching your potential referee early, because then you have the luxury of having this discussion, thinking about it, and then maybe changing your plan, and then asking for a reference about the new plan. And I've always been saying asking for a reference. Usually what happens is that the person gets a yes and then asks for n references. Sometimes n is very large and sometimes n is unreasonably large. So if the person agrees to write a reference, it's okay to say, well, actually, I'm applying to 3 places because I'm not sure they will, my first choice will take me, so I want to have some backup. So would you mind writing 3 letters of reference? They will say, of course, of course. But some other people come to me and say, thanks for accepting to write a reference for me. Can you write to these 10 different places? 8 or 10 letters of reference is unreasonable. Each of these letters is supposed to say something along the lines of, and this person and this institution form a perfect match, because look at all the things that this person has done, which are exactly the things in which this institution is so strong. And so if someone from here took on this person, then they would be so proud of having them in their team and blah, blah, blah. And this perfect match has to be explained by making reference to commonalities between the applicant and the institution. And it is unlikely that this story can be weaved for 10 different institutions. So it's implausible to say, well, this person is the best match for this. So be a bit more selective in your choice of where you want to apply, instead of just saying take a scattergun approach and then take all the ones who get back to you and then make up your mind later. This is something that is wasteful and pisses everybody off, pisses off the people who get your application, offer you a place, and then get turned down later, and pisses off the person who has to write the 10 letters, because it's not quite the same as writing the letter once and then pasting it for the other 9 times. There's always extra work to do with tailoring the letter to the other institutions and then submitting it with all the quirks of every institution. I mean, the referee will waste a lot of time writing and sending off 10 letters as opposed to 1 or 2 or 3. So be parsimonious in this use of the goodwill budget that you get from the referee who loves you. So, in summary, if you want to get this good letter, where a good letter is from someone who knows you well and can be specific about why you're great and can give evidence about why you're a good match for the place you're applying to, then the things I recommend you do is, first of all, choose a good referee who knows you well and is well disposed towards you. And for that, you should prepare your ground beforehand. Give them plenty of time, 1 or 2 months. Give them plenty of ammunition. All the application papers that you're going to submit, prepare them before you ask your referee to do the reference letter and give it to them. And 3 is the third in order of these things, but it's actually the first you need to do, starting years before, is be brilliant. Do great stuff, because that's the only way that there will be good things to say about you. If you have done great things, if you have been brilliant, then there is something that the referee can shine their spotlight on to highlight your virtues. But it is your virtues that should be talked about, not something that the referee makes up. And this is only possible if you have done great stuff that's worth talking about and describing in enthusiastic terms to the recipient of the letter. And once you do get the place, if you've done all these things, then you have got the place with some help from the referee, but basically because you were great, because the recipient of the application and of the reference letters thought you were great. This was confirmed by the reference letter, but it's your merit. It's because of the great stuff you did that you got the post. The referee helped, but it's not the referee who gave you the place. The referee just helped you be seen in a good light for all the great stuff that you did. And that's how it should be, and that's why you deserve the place. So be grateful to your referee, but you earned it with your own work. So if you find this video useful, then hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more.